full-length hair and a lopsided fringe with smile to match. Maybe he'd stopped off for a couple of bevies on the way to church. There was already an APB out on him. Last seen by a neighbour walking up the street at half-time. He was the prime suspect. You couldn't argue with the statistics, Miller thought. Murder and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. The bride had a California look, long blonde flowing hair, like those lasses in the "I'd like to teach the world to sing" Coke ad. She'd have gone down a storm on the grey, grimy streets of Sunderland. It was her big day, but the smile didn't seem to match the occasion. A bit uncertain, not sure what she was getting herself into. Next to that was another photo of a little boy, maybe 5 or 6. He had his mother's blonde hair and his dad's big wide smile, and perhaps 2 years left to live. It wasn't a big room, and now seemed even less so, with Miller's own bulky frame, the gangly D.C. Lawton, a photographer and a doctor, all jostling for space. And there were the 2 bodies. "Christ," whispered D.C. Lawton, his hand over his open mouth. They were on the settee. If you half closed your eyes and forgot where you were for just a moment, they looked like they could have fallen asleep in front of the telly. But it was a grisly illusion. A young woman, heavily pregnant. The same one in the photograph, Miller presumed. But he only had the hair to go on. Her head was a bloody mush. She'd been bludgeoned with something heavy, a hammer or a big spanner perhaps. There were brown scorch marks on both her earlobes. He could smell it now, in with the stale cigarettes in the overflowing ashtray down by the fireplace and the metallic sweet smell of blood and other crime scene odours, a hint of something smoky or burnt. The little boy was beside her, his hand resting on her knee and his head against her shoulder. He looked about the same age as Stuart's own son, 7 or 8. His head was less of a mess than the woman's, but still caked with blood from one big gash on the right side. His earlobes were also burnt. D.C. Chris Lawton stumbled out of the room, and Miller heard him dry retching in the backyard. On the floor at their feet was some kind of transformer box. One end was plugged into the mains, and at the other, car jump leads with alligator clips. The box looked like it could have come off a Scale-Extric racing car set, or something similar. The doctor plucked his dandruff-flecked jacket from a door hook, shrugged it over his narrow shoulders, and snapped his case shut. "Electrocution or bludgeoning. Either would have been enough. So why both?" Miller shook his head slowly. Why indeed? One was the cold application of science and gadgetry. The other was the heated application of brute force. What were they dealing with here? The room was a dingy box, 10 feet by 12, dimly lit by a narrow window which looked out onto a postage stamp backyard, patterned with curls of dog shit. It was the same kind of room Miller had grown up in. Same cheap carpet, same bitter fug of old cigarettes. If you're lucky, you grow up and better yourself, and never take for granted where you came from. If you're not so lucky, you spend the rest of your life drowned in piss and self-pity and lashing out at those you claim to love. Miller's hand wandered instinctively to the small scar at the corner of his eye where his father's wedding ring had caught him on his 12th birthday. Is that what happened here? A domestic gone too far? He looked at the bodies propped side by side on the settee, cuddled together, hands on knees, posed in a cruel parody of happy families. No, this was something else. He had experienced blood and death and tragedy and stupidity and all the other daily horrors included in his job description, but he'd never encountered anything like this before. Miller's vision blurred. His throat tightened. The room was closing in on him. The low hum of the TV, the rolling, ecstatic waves of red and white, the jubilant players lifting the trophy in constant replay. All fucking nonsense. Miller switched it off.